What's up, y'all? Volsy Thoughts here. I haven't made a video for a while, and this one isn't very impromptu, but it's a conversation I feel needs to be had. For the past two, three election cycles, I've noticed a pretty insidious narrative that's spread among social media. Now, there's data on this narrative, and it actually proves it wrong, but every single time it still rears its ugly head, and I just don't understand it. I call it the blame the black man narrative. Now, for a rundown of what it means, it essentially rhetoric that seeks to place blame on why progressive politicians don't tend to win. And every single time, the answer is because black men simply aren't voting for them. Now, this whole blame the black man thing, it goes outside of politics as well. If you spend any amount of time of the hellscape that we call Twitter or Xer or whatever the hell Elon Musk did to it, you'll see that this is a common thing said amongst a certain demographic of people, usually, unfortunately, black women and LGBT men. Now, to be fair to these people, the rhetoric does seem to have some merit to it. If you look at some, criminal stats, if you look at political stats, it does seem to have some merit that black men are maybe the problem here. But when you look deep into the research, or deeper into the research, it just doesn't hold up to credence. Now, I want to preference this by saying that I'm not a scholar or a researcher. If you want some scholarly philosophical breakdown on the intersection of being black and being male, there's always the YouTuber FD Signifier. There's Lil Bill, who I call my evil twin. There's an entire subgenre of scholarship on this called Black Male Studies. There's a man called Dr. Thomas Curry. He's written a book called The Man Not on how white supremacist patriarchy actually stripped black men from being part of the gender in the first place. So there's a lot of research into this. You don't need to get it from me. Those guys are way better at explaining this than I can ever be. But what I want to concentrate on here is basically the practical and pragmatic answers to this narrative that we keep seeing. As I said, there is data on it, but it doesn't match up to what's going on. Now, the question is the lack of black male voting participation the reason why progressive politics or progressive politicians tend to lose their races? Well, the answer to that is no. If we look at exit polling just on the last gubernatorial cycle, we see that black men have always voted for the progressive candidate. I want to focus on three races that I saw this narrative in, more in the first two races than the last one. But the first one I want to speak on is Stacey Abrams. She unfortunately fell for this rhetoric as well, as she went on radio stations also saying that she was concerned about losing because black men wouldn't vote for her. But what the polls say when it all came down to it, black men did vote for her, overwhelmingly, as a matter of fact. So why, in that case, did she lose if black people voted for her? Well, it's because of white people. I'm not even just saying that. Exit polling shows that white people, both white men and women, overwhelmingly voted for Brian Kemp. She didn't lose on the backs of black men. It was white people who didn't vote for her, basically. Outvoted. All right, so what about other elections, like my home state of Florida? Well, we see the same exact issue here, except we have another demographic in Florida, which is the Latino voters. Here in Florida, Latinos are a big block, so they're the ones who actually decide the state votes, not black people, not even non-Hispanic white people. It's the Latinos who decide it. So what happened here? Well, as we see, a clear majority of Latino voters voted for the conservative candidate. And again, black men vote for the perceived progressive one. And I want to stress the perceived progressive one. Jesus Christ, this was a bad decision. So anyway, let's look at one more election, the 2019 Louisiana Senate race. The clear progressive candidate in this race was Gary Chambers. And he lost in a landslide. Like, it wasn't even close. Just look at these numbers, all right? It wasn't close at all. Again, we cannot put this on black men. Just look at the numbers here. This clearly. So what's my point here? My point is, in each of these election cycles, the worry was that black men would be the issue if these candidates lost. But in every single one of these elections, black people in general were simply outvoted. It wouldn't matter if black men went 100% for the progressive candidate. In each of these races, we're simply outnumbered. We just cannot overcome it. Now, let's be fair to the people who levy this critique. There is an actual gender gap between black men and black women. Black women do vote more than black men at almost double digits. So, what can we say about that? Well, the first thing we can bring up is the obvious that black men are more likely to face a felony conviction, which takes away from voting rights. There's also voter suppression tactics like gerrymandering, closing certain districts, moving around voting times, moving voting polls. All that discourages voting. And there's also just death, straight up dying. Black men are dying at a higher rate and dying younger. Dead people don't vote. So that's an obvious one. Well, okay. So can we say the lack of progressive policies then are because black men don't support them? And again, the answer here is no. Per the data by Pew Research, black men are the most progressive group of men, supporting women's rights, describing feminism as empowering, and even saying that organizations need to do more to address the issues of black LGBT youth. Even a surprising amount of conservatives agree with that, at almost half of them. And when it comes to transgender issues, black men and black women are pretty much dead even on believing that someone's gender and sex are the same and assigned at birth. But look, y'all, I didn't make this video to say that there aren't any issues out there when it comes to black men and political participation. If anything, me pointing out that the incarceration rate and the mortality rate of black men is the main culprit for why the vote gap exists should be even more motivation for black men to get politically involved. Access to quality health care is one of the biggest issues black people face in this country, and you'd be surprised how tied that is to politics. Expansions of programs like Medicaid can be put on the ballot. Several gubernatorial candidates have called for Medicare for all in their states. Like, just access to better health care can raise the amount of preventative care that black men can get. Just access to more Medicaid and more health insurance can probably encourage more to get therapy, which would lower the suicidality rate. My point is with this video is that the lack of wins for Democratic progressive candidates isn't on the back of black men. The data just doesn't show it. It's because of two main things, in my opinion. Democrats just utterly fail to lockstep and pass progressive policies that would actually help black people in the long run. They just always fail to lockstep and pass those policies. This is always a thing. The second thing is, of course, white supremacy. We've seen over and over and over again that anytime a white Republican candidate dog whistles racism, they win. There literally have to be a complete and utter disaster for them to lose. And even that's not always a guarantee. Simply blaming black men not only ignores the massive problem staring you in the damn face, it demotivates black men from becoming politically active. If you keep telling a group of people who initially support you that you're the reason they lost, what makes you think they'll keep supporting you? You're literally causing the self-fulfilling prophecy by doing this. And for the life of me, I don't get how it makes sense to keep doing it. If you want black men to become politically active, do the same thing you do for black women. Speak to our issues without blaming us for your failures. Hell, learn what our issues even are in the first place. Do actual research, like outreach to us. Know which policies we support besides crime and police, because those are extremely obvious, and work to pass those. Treat us as actual people, not just a block to vote for and to blame when you lose. Because that's always going to be a losing strategy. Anyway, y'all, thanks for watching. I hope I explained this well enough for folks to have a civil discussion on it. Let's talk. Like, comment, subscribe. Peace.